Welcome back, everybody. We are excited to be back for weeks 6 and 7 of our training series. If you've been working your way up to this point, what we've been doing is working towards more realistic style tracks. We started out plain and simple with some really short drags, and then we moved into some longer lines and some turns and things like that. We're going to continue on this week with that philosophy and add a bunch of new things. This is where you are really going to test your dog. I'm Tracker Mike with Michigan Deer Track and Hounds, and let's get down to business. Today I'm going to talk to you about some things that you can do to improve the realism in your mock tracks. We're going to go through a number of things that you can try. What you're really trying to do is push your dog to their limits. We really want to get you in that zone that's going to be more realistic with a track that you're actually going to see in the field. So let's head over to our whiteboard and we'll get right at it. All right, guys, I know it's not as exciting as being out in the field and watching the dogs work, but this is a necessary part of training. The first thing we're going to discuss is aging your tracks. Now, I find there's a couple of zones where dogs start to struggle, so I'm going to go ahead and lay out a couple ranges for you as you start aging your tracks. What you're going to want to do is go out and lay your track, let it sit for a certain number of hours before you run your dog on it. Our ultimate goal is to get to 24 hours plus, but we're going to break it down into sections, and you're going to work within the zones, doing various lengths of tracks within each zone. This is going to keep your dog from getting accustomed to a certain age of track and cause them to constantly look for a track of a certain age, even if you're starting them on the right line. So you want to get them well versed in addressing all kinds of tracks of various ages. Now, the reason why we age our tracks is because you're never ever going to get a call from a hunter who shot a deer an hour ago to come and track it unless they're a buddy of yours. So typically what I find is our typical range for tracks is between 12 and 24, 26 hours. We do at times get calls for tracks that are a little older or tracks that are a little newer, but if you get solid within that 12 to 24 hour range, you are going to be ready to rock come season. So I'm going to break down the categories for you. Our first category is going to be anywhere from 0 to 4 hours. 0 to 4 hours is fairly easy. There's not going to be much difference in between, not aging it and 4 hours. Typically, we will find that challenge at about the 8-hour mark. But you want to do a couple tracks within this time just to make sure that your dog knows something is changing. After that, you're going to move on to 4 to 10 hours old. At the 8-hour mark is typically where we start to see some challenges with the dogs. They might go off track a lot more. They might slow their pace down more. So just pay attention to your dog. Give them the opportunity to correct themselves if they go off, but don't forget that you can always restart. After that, you're going to move on to 10 to 18 hours. Once you hit that 16 to 18 hour mark, you're going to be in the realistic zone. 16 to 18 hours is a fairly typical track. This is going to be all of your I shot it, I can't find it, they're not bleeding much. This is going to get you in the range of your liver shots. And then our next segment is going to get us in the range of our final category, which is our gut shots. So 10 to 18 hours, you're probably going to have to work some time on this. Maybe you lay one track 10 hours old. Maybe the next track you lay 16 hours old. Maybe the next track you lay 12 hours old. You really want to throw that variety in there for your dog, and I'm going to keep reminding you of that. After this section is really where we're going to break through with our dogs. Now you're going to move into 16 to 24 hours old, or 24 hours plus if your dog can do it. I often get asked, how old of a track can my dog do? And my genuine honest answer is, I don't know. I haven't found one that he couldn't do yet. I've taken tracks that are 36 hours old and we've completed it. I've taken tracks that were 10 hours old and he struggled on it. So realistically, if you're training for that main range, which is going to be this range here, the 10 to 24 hours old, you're going to cover about 90% of the tracks you'll realistically go on. This is a great time to take a quick pause. And if you guys are enjoying this content, we would really appreciate you hitting that subscribe button. And if you have any comments, suggestions, questions, feel free to go ahead and leave something in the comments and we'll try to address it for you. The next thing we're going to want to train for is one of the most common challenges in tracking. It's at the hunter's point of loss. Now, you can mix these various items in while you're doing your aging your tracks as your dog progresses. Judge your dog, see if you can push them that extra step, and start adding in these extra things. So the hunter's point of loss, I find, is one of the most challenging portions of a track. Typically, a dog is going to breeze through the known track because you have a whole bunch of scents. You have the deer's scent, you have the blood scent, you have where those people walked, you have the ground disturbances that all of those people made. So there really is a lot of scent to be had up until the hunter's point of loss. This is typically an area where dogs will tend to have to work a little harder, and then once you break past this point, is when the dog will tend to line out and really get committed on a track. So what I mean by the hunter's point of loss is if your track came out this way, you made a turn, it came out this way, and all of a sudden, this is where your hunter's last blood is. So what can we assume is going to happen at that point? Well, they're not going to give up as soon as they stop seeing blood. So they're going to start going and checking. They're going to check this trail. 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 Maybe they'll run one last Hail Mary and run way out here, 100 yards to see if they find anything. So what happens is your hunter has been walking through this line the entire time, picking up that blood scent, that hair scent, that dander. And then all of a sudden they get to this point of loss and they can't make out what happens. You really have to be patient with your dog at this point. Let them work through. Pay attention to what you've learned about your dog when they're off the track, but give them an opportunity to work through it. They'll start developing their own style as they work through these difficulties, and they'll get better and better at solving them a lot quicker as they gain more experience. So we want to simulate this exact thing. You're going to take a buddy with you while you lay your track. When your buddy gets to here, your buddy is going to do one of these things. At first, make it easy. Just do one turn out. So your buddy's going to track along. Maybe they do a right turn. Okay? They're going to head back to the truck. We don't want them on the track after this point. So they're going to have to wait until you lay the rest of your track. And maybe you just go from here, you go another 100 yards. And see how your dog does. If your dog does okay, you can go ahead and have your buddy on your next track do a couple more little passes. We're trying to make it as realistic as possible. After you've done some work with the hunter's point of loss, we're kind of going to extend this same concept at various points throughout the track. Just for drawing purposes, we'll just draw a straight line track. So now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to simulate multiple points of loss. Maybe your helper comes up here and then searches this way. Then he picks up the track. Maybe he does this and loops back around. Then maybe he picks up the track, gets to the last blood, does his search, then heads back to the truck. This scenario happens a lot on a real track. They track for a little while, they lose blood, they start searching, they pick it up again, they follow it for a while, they lose blood again, they start searching. So this is another concept that you're really going to want to train for. The next thing we're going to train for is changes in our scenting conditions. This can be caused by terrain changes or structurally how the forest is laid out or a number of various things. So a couple of things that I want to touch on that I want you to train for that happens often are training for things that cause scent pools. If we're working down like a straight trail, running a deer run, then all of a sudden we come to an open area that's got grasses in it, and, maybe there's some tall trees all around it or even just some high brush. This can create a scent pool. So what happens here is if our track goes straight through this, as the deer comes through, there's a big open area where wind can blow. So if our wind is blowing across this way, what's going to happen is that scent is going to blow off that track and it's going to be held in by the brush around it. So oftentimes a dog will get in there and there will be just a cloud of scent around this small area. I had a dog who developed his own technique. Whenever we would hit one of these areas, recognize a scent pool, he would start trail checking. He would trail check every trail in that area until he found an actual ground scent that he could follow. So as you're laying out some of your lines, be looking for these situations. Be looking for an area that you know there's an opening and it has brush around it. Lay your track through there. As you develop farther through this, then you can go ahead and take your track and maybe come to the middle and do a 90. That way your dog can start to learn that it's not always going to run straight through those open areas. They need to look for it. After you work through these sections, we can start to move into a little bit more advanced training. Rivers and swamps are key to train for. You are going to run into them. Deer are going to go where you don't want to go, but you're going to go anyway. So you have to train for those situations. Now, these are specific scenarios that I've actually encountered and experienced while tracking, just to give you a target of kind of where you want to get your dog to. So maybe we have an ankle deep or even a knee deep river running through here. We want to simulate what a deer may do at a river crossing. Deer often use rivers to lose scent. It's a natural evasion technique from predators. So I have seen deer do all of these things. I've seen them cross the river. I've seen them cross the river, go up a little ways, and come back across the river. I've seen them go in the river, run down the river a ways, and pop out somewhere else. So all of these situations are things that you're going to want to test and try for. This is where it really becomes experience that's going to help your dog get to this phase. Your dog needs to learn how to sort and search these out. What we want your dog to do is not just follow the line across the river. We don't want them just to follow the line across the river and then go off here searching some more. We want them to recognize that the deer may turn. We also want them to learn that the deer doesn't always cross the river. They get to hear if they're not smelling any scent on this shoreline, then they need to come back and start working this shoreline, finding where the exit is. That will get you set up pretty decent. If you can get your dog to understand these three concepts and really start exposing them to these things, they'll be well prepared when the real situation hits. So the final thing I'm going to talk about today is terrain changes. Now this is really just you intentionally going and seeking out a variety of terrain on a single track. Scent does change as terrain changes. Moist ground is going to hold more scent. Dry ground is going to hold less scent. So your gravel roads, your beaten paths, things like that are going to hold less scent than a nice, soft forest floor. Pine trees as well can alter the scent or provide added scent that your dog may not be accustomed to. So you want to make sure on these tracks that you're going through a variety of terrain, from hardwoods into the pines, maybe down across a gravel road, down into the swamps. Really get into intentionally setting out to lay your track on various terrains. Just to give you guys a quick recap on some targets and some ideas of things you can do to extend your tracks to be more realistic. I'm going to start with aging the tracks. Really start building your dog towards that 24-hour plus mark. Don't forget to train for the hunter's point of loss. It is the most common challenge that you will run into, and you will run into it on every single track. Make sure your dog knows how to sort out a point of loss. Work on adding some scent pools in. Seek out those areas that's an open grass field surrounded by thick brush or tall trees. Train for those rivers and swamps, and intentionally set your tracks on various types of terrain. We hope you enjoyed this segment and learned how to make your tracks a little bit more realistic. We really want you guys to be successful, so please, if you guys have questions, let us know. If you're struggling on something with your dog, let us know. We're willing to help you. Good luck, guys, making your tracks more realistic, and we look forward to seeing you in the next segment.